Executive leaders at AEC firms don't fail because they lack engineering skills. They fail because they can't cross that chasm between engineer and enterprise leader. And every one of those failures is costly. It occurs in the context of leadership benches being thin. Succession planning is often left too much to hope and to chance. So I advise CEOs on leadership development at the executive level. And so what we're going to talk about today is the strategy for bridging that gap, for getting people over that chasm. So let's go ahead and jump in. I worked with an architectural firm over 20 years ago, and I was brought in to do succession planning. When I came into the firm, here's what we found. The executive leaders really wanted to be spending their time rainmaking, setting firm strategy, and at least for one of them, spending more time at his house in Florida. In order to accomplish that, they had to have the next level down. In this firm, it was senior project leaders. They needed to own client relationships, and they needed to oversee work. And if that had been happening, what we would have seen was staff architects who were owning their work, being proactive, taking initiative. And this is an excellent firm. What we had was everybody doing yesterday's work. The partners in the firm, rather than setting strategy, were the go-to people for current clients. The senior project managers were doing work. They were up to their elbows in the work. And the staff architects were waiting around, waiting to be told what to do. Everyone was doing yesterday's work. And my guess would be you see and I see every day this type of thing occurring. So when we start talking about these leadership transitions, I talk about them in two different ways. The first lens is leadership transitions. Our work has to scale as our job scale. We have to be doing different kinds of work, number one. Number two, the leadership signals that these people are sending out have to change. They have to send out a signal that says, I'm ready. I'm ready to do more. So let's talk first about the transitions, and let me just walk us through these quickly. From doing the work to owning the outcomes. And engineers are particularly great at doing the work. You know, they're trained problem solvers. They need to move to owning outcomes, allowing other people to do the work. Delegating tasks to delegating responsibilities. Often you'll see people who are, yes, they are delegating, but they are delegating very specific things. Everything must come back in through them and out through them, as opposed to delegating overall responsibilities, but keeping their finger on the pulse. Managing individuals to managing leaders. Another way of saying this is leading followers versus leading leaders. Making the transition to leading people who themselves are overseeing people, and themselves have their own egos involved in getting things done. From a problem solver to a priority setter means I love to solve problems. That's how engineers begin their career. They have to make that transition to setting priorities. What are the most important problems to solve? And then giving that direction to others so others know the right problems to be solving. And finally, from protecting their turf to building their business. Often the most able and motivated managers have a my turf mentality. That's what they're interested in. And in order for them to advance, they're going to have to increasingly take on a mindset that says, it's when the overall company wins that I win. So here's what I'd like to do. So let's do a deep dive on one of these, delegating tasks to delegating responsibilities. I have a client, Greg, who is the leader of program implementation, program management for a large defense contractor. This business has gone from 300 people to 600 people, and it's expected to go to anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 people in the coming 3 to 5 years. He is viewed as the highest potential person within this business in terms of executive leadership. We were talking about this idea of moving to delegating responsibility. The most talented person on his team is a woman named Lisa. And we were talking about his work, and I said to him, listen, let me ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong would you say your abilities are in terms of delegating to Lisa? And he said, a 9. I said, okay, let's frame it up this way. No one hired me to work with you in order to do a better job at your current role. You're being developed for the next role and the role beyond that. In order for you to do that, Lisa has to step up into your job. That's the goal. That's what success looks like. Now the question becomes, let me come back and ask you, Greg, the same question. If the picture of success is Lisa being able to step into your role, how good of a job are you doing in delegating to and developing her? And he said, a 4. That 5-point gap, that's the difference. That's the difference that we have to close. So let's stop here. We've got a good group where we can have some dialogue. I'm curious, when it just comes to this idea of doing the work, of being able to scale from a doer to a leader, what are the biggest challenges that you see in your firm? Where do you see people struggling the most to make the transition?
Lack of letting go of what they used to do.
Lack of letting go of what they used to do. All right.
They want to be a doer.
Yep. They want to be a doer.
I think, there's just the sense that they can do it faster than, sharing it with somebody else and teaching them to do it and then getting them up to speed and struggling with that now.
So it would be faster if I just do it myself. Excellent. Yes, sir.
I think there's challenges with headcount too. So if we happen to be a 600-person firm, and so you need to start to have the division of labor where you're putting people in positions to lead the work, but in some ways, can they fully let go of the work at the same time because you don't have the body count to do that. So there's this transitional period where you just don't have the numbers to fully let go. I think I see that happening.
Okay. So on the one hand, they're being charged with delegating. On the other hand, they don't actually have all the headcount required to be able to truly let go of the work.
Yeah, wearing a lot of hats, for sure.
Okay. Interesting. How about in terms of lessons learned in this area? What have you seen that has worked particularly well in terms of your strategies for addressing this? Or is that why you're here?
Hiring more admins to help that person.
I'm sorry?
Hiring more admins to get that person.
Hiring more admins to get that person.
For capacity and realizing that they can, transition and delegate more tasks and things like that.
Okay.
Sometimes, we have a smaller business, and so some people don't want to necessarily, they just want to do everything themselves, and then they don't have, people below them to transition to delegate to. So it's just giving them capacity to do that.
So giving them administrative capacity to be able to free them up to do the work.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, sir.
We have been doing a lot of training. The unfortunate thing is that those we bring on board, they don't know the nature of a business very well. They are these people, academics, people that know it by the book, but now how do our system operate? And at the end of the day, we fall back into what we used to be.
Yeah.
So they have to understand how our machine runs, and we have said that. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to get that, and we are a very large organization, so it is challenging.
So just to clarify, so the people have kind of an academic or theoretical understanding.
Those who come to train, yes.
Okay. And what level are these folks? Are these entry level or are these more senior people?
Now, these are, say we are talking managerial level.
Okay.
Because we want them to lead, to manage.
Right.
We do have engineers and architects, but we need leaders.
Right.
So that's where we're like.
So if their understanding is more academic, is it more,
No, I mean to say that the trainers are more academic.
I see. So the trainers are more academic, but what these people need is the more practical help in terms of making
Somebody
the
who
moves.
understands what do we do, what do we suffer from, how do we delegate, how should we delegate,
Yeah.
and engineering side of the business.
Gotcha.
That's where we're struggling.
Okay. Ruth Ann.
I think where I've seen it be successful is those leaders who naturally want to bring people along, that they realize it isn't all dependent upon them. I think it's almost like a mindset. Either, I mean, I think with engineers in particular, that they want things done their way, and where somebody, I think, who's a true leader and people developer, they bring people right along with them. They see that as part of their role, in addition to managing the project, managing the client, that they're just naturally, I'm calling it, bringing people along, taking them to meetings, having conversations with them, really mentoring them, versus seeing it as just delegating the
Yeah.
task to someone.
You just used a phrase there of mindset. And I think that mindset has a big part in this. All the firms that I deal with are either running on engineering talent or running on, very intelligent, well-trained technical talent. You can't just hire people in off the street to do this work. They're great problem solvers. Everybody knows that about engineers. The mindset of, I love to solve problems, and I get affirmed for solving problems, and I get recognized for solving problems, and I am where I am for personally solving problems, is extremely deeply ingrained in people. And now we are asking them to really make a big transition, which is, now I want you to find satisfaction in accomplishing through others. And that's where, hiring administrative help, on the one hand, yes, I think is helpful, but it does not change core mindset, because people do what they want to do. People do what they want to do. And so part of what, and I'm curious about this, if you have success stories on this, I can tell you an example or two, where we work with people on their mindset. To say, for example, when we talk about moving from a problem solver to a priority setter, that move is critical, because if you are a VP of a engineering team, what you're doing is identifying these are the problems that that take precedence, because these are the problems that add the most value for the team, for the organization, so that the engineers who work for you can then say, okay, now I know how to prioritize. So I think it is a mindset issue. Does anybody have an example of where they've seen somebody make that change in mindset? Yep.
So I think because everybody processes this differently, and this was a unique example where somebody was really struggling to pull themselves out. And the advice they received was, stop thinking about yourself and your contribution to the project, and think about the project first.
Yeah.
What does the project need? Because I think that person was feeling like they weren't doing enough, and they were just kind of stuck in that mindset. And once they realized they could start looking at it from the project's perspective, not them first, they were able to realize, okay, it needs more resources. It's not me not being able to achieve my goals. It's like the project needs more. And that really helped get them that first step to shifting their mindset.
Excellent. Thank you. Who else, in terms of what you've seen work, or a shift that you've seen as being particularly valuable or workable? Okay. Let's talk next. If I can get this thing working. Let's talk next about leadership signal. And this is a second order function, but it's equally important. And what I mean by this is, if leadership transition is about doing different work, having your work scale, leadership signal is, what's the signal that I'm sending about my readiness to be a leader at the next level? So you can see the transitions here, things like operating at the right altitude. Are you able to speak strategically versus being down in the details? Starting with the answer. Are you able to talk about conclusions as opposed to kind of showing the complexity of your work? Influencing laterally. Are you able to influence your peers as well as, manage up and manage down? Credible confidence. When I put you in front of a group, do you inspire confidence or do you inspire anxiety? And putting points on the board. When in the end, at the end of the day in business, we're here to get results. So are you putting points on the board, and are you scoring field goals or are you scoring touchdowns? So let's do another deep dive here on start with the answer. So another individual that I worked with was VP of implementation for a $500 million healthcare services company. His group was responsible for standing up new clients. These are very large, complicated client projects. His ability to grasp detail was phenomenal. The CEO loved him. The COO thought he was terrific. The COO was his direct boss. The chief growth officer described him as the single best implementation leader he'd worked with in 30 years. And yet, when it came time for promotion, his name never came up. Why so? Because he was sending out the wrong signal. His signal was, I am fantastic at my current role, but I do not have the potential to move to the next level because I'm in the detail, I'm in the minutia. I demonstrate my competence through the complexity that I deal with. I do not come with answers. I do not lead with insights. I don't do those kinds of things. So that, I think, what I've seen in the work that I do is another key area that it's less tangible, but it is equally important in terms of being able to help people send out better signals about their ability to handle the next level of responsibility. So let's talk a little bit about this. Let's talk about leadership signal and essentially readiness in terms of how it's perceived, not just by the fundamental work that they're doing. What do you see in your organizations when it comes to the signal that people are sending? Does that question make sense?
Maybe I'll give it a shot. I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but
That's good.
I think sometimes, like having that maybe bigger view, just still focusing on their small group or small project versus, what's that next level viewpoint that they need to have in order to be strategic and contribute at a high level.
Okay.
Is that right?
No, I think that's good. Another kind of a catch-all phrase for this is executive presence. And the reason that I'm talking about this is it becomes very much of a, I don't know, I know it when I see it. Somebody feels like they are ready for more responsibility. And my question ends up being, if you look into your organization today and you think about your high potential leaders, where is it that people struggle with this? Where is it that they're sending out the wrong signal about their readiness to move to the next level?